Hello and welcome to the channel, and today we are talking about Honda's brand new CBR1000RR-R for 2020. That's right, we are getting a brand spanking new Fireblade next year. And in true Honda style, they've been secretly developing this bike on test tracks, away from the limelight, away from all the buzz and the rumors and the gossip on the run up to ECIMA 2019. And then suddenly, just hours before the big show, they come and steal everybody's limelight with this big announcement. And we've got a ton of information on this bike, a ton of pictures, and I have to say, it looks absolutely stunning. They haven't just given this bike a lick of paint and a bit of a tweak on the engine. This thing is completely redesigned and re-engineered, and it could very well be the sports bike for 2020. So let's just jump in and have a little look at some of the technical spec on this bike. I must warn you, it's not going to be the most technical video out there on YouTube when it comes to the numbers. But we also want to talk about the more philosophical side of this bike and ask the question really, who is a machine like this for in 2020, where we have this brand new breed of super nakeds, slightly more road focused, but equally mental 200 horsepower plus bikes. Where does that leave bikes like the Fireblade that traditionally speaking have been, the kind of road going sports bike? They've been very well known for being, absolute weapons on the track, but also very rideable on the road too. And it looks like Honda have kind of taken this bike and made it a little bit more track focused, a little bit more performance focused than ever before. Well, let's have a look. So first up, if you actually look at some of the quotes from Honda themselves, they are saying that the CBR1000RR-R's battleground has moved to the racetrack. They're calling this a track bike now, where its advanced performance, they say, can be most fully demonstrated. Now, that's not going to say that this is a bad bike for the road. Quite the opposite. I think it's probably going to be even easier to ride than the old bike, especially with some of the new technology in there. But it certainly sets the overall tone for this machine, and it may influence your decision whether you're going to buy one or not, especially when we consider that you are now very well served in that 200 horsepower plus market for street bikes now, some of which are just potentially more focused for road riding. So first up, the big question is to winglet or not? That is the question. Well, the 2020 CBR1000RR-R answers that with a plum. We have 6 winglets in total. And I like the way they've done it here. You can see here that they're kind of enclosed in these little tunnels. They're not quite as, what would you say, Halfords as the winglets on some other bikes like the V4 Street Fighter from Ducati. These things look nicely integrated into the bike, and they have a proper purpose to play. It's all about downforce, it's all about high-speed stability, better braking, wheelie control and all that kind of stuff. So again, with absolute performance in mind, this bike of course comes with all of that aerodynamic technology there. The new Euro 5 engine remains an inline 4, so it's not the V4 that some may have expected, and it's sharing the same bore and stroke as that RC213V as well. We also get a semi-cam gear train, we get finger follower rocker arms, we get titanium conrods, we've got aluminium forged pistons as well, all about reducing that inertial weight. Also, it's got the same friction reduction technology and piston jets and check ball system as found in that RC213VS. So this bike very much takes its lineage from Honda's high-end racing machines. Each piston is 5% lighter than the previous bike as well, and helping to keep the temperature under control, we now have a multi-point and multi-directional oil spraying system as well that only activates at higher RPMs. So that's all about keeping that balance between oil pressure and temperature right. When it's not required at lower RPMs, those check balls within the jets shut off the oil flow, and that just helps to maintain a better oil pressure elsewhere. And if all that means nothing to you, then let's just sum it up simply and say that this bike puts out 214 horsepower at 14,500 RPM with peak torque of 113 Newton meters achieved at 12,500 RPM. It's 25 horsepower up on the previous bike. And just to make it even more simple for you, if you're not into numbers, this thing is just flipping mental. All that bundled up into a package that weighs less than 201 kilograms wet. And feeding this mighty beast, we now have a newly designed Ram air duct in the front of the fairing. This thing is feeding a stream of air directly into the airbox. At the rear of the bike, we've got the 421 exhaust system, which has been designed and developed in conjunction with Akrapovic. We've got a titanium end can and also a clever valve system on this bike as well, which can switch between open and closed to either give you more torque at lower RPMs or more power at high RPMs too. We've got 3 default riding modes too, with the option to change all of the parameters around things like power, engine braking, wheelie control, and of course the selectable torque control too. So summing the engine up, we've got those finger follower rocker arms, we've got titanium conrods and forged aluminium pistons reducing inertial weight. That airbox now fed by the newly designed Ram air duct and the titanium end can on that new exhaust system developed by Akrapovic as well. Elsewhere, looking at the chassis and the general equipment you get on this bike, there is a new aluminium diamond frame that sees the removal of the upper crossmember, with the rear of the engine now hosting the rear shock as well. Overall, the Fireblade's vertical and torsional strength is up by 18% and 9% respectively. And interestingly, the horizontal rigidity of the bike is actually reduced by 11%. To give the rider more feel for the road too. In the standard model, you get Showa's 43mm big piston fork, or the BFP, and that's matched to a fully adjustable Showa balance free rear cushion light, or a BFRCL. At the front of the bike, we've got a whopping 330mm front disc. That is up 10mm on the previous model, and we've got a Nissan 4-piston caliper there. The ABS on this bike is also adjustable for track riding too. If, however, this isn't good enough for you and you need a bit of an upgrade on that, you also have the SP model, which introduces Öhlins and Brembos all round. You now get the 43mm Öhlin NPX front forks, and you get Brembo's Stalmer 4-piston radial calipers on the front as well. And both bikes are actually getting an increased rear tyre size, with the 2020 Fireblade rocking 255 ZR17s. Elsewhere, we've got a Bosch 6-axis IMU, which manages all of the electrical systems, and we've also got a 3-level Honda steering dampener on the bike as well, which I think is made by Showa too. A 5-inch fully customizable TFT display as well, which is operated by this rather cool 4-way switch on the handlebars. Honda's got the keyless smart system installed on this bike too, and the adjustable start mode, aka launch control, also comes as standard as well. And the really cool thing about this keyless system here is it actually serves a proper purpose. Honda wanted to keep this top yoke on the bike as simple as possible, because if you remember, that Ram air duct actually directs air straight over the top of the yoke into the airbox, and they didn't want anything on that yoke that was going to disrupt the airflow, so they had to get rid of the ignition system and the key, so therefore they've gone keyless, and it actually makes sense. So summing up the chassis and equipment, we've got that new aluminium frame and spring arm, we've got the Bosch 6-axis inertial measurement unit, a full color TFT dash, 3 default riding modes, plus the option to customize things like power, engine, brake and wheelie control. You've also got Honda's selectable torque control, and launch control comes as standard as well. And finally, let's talk about the aerodynamics on this bike. This bike looks slippery because it is. It's taken a lot of its learnings from the MotoGP world, and this bike is more aerodynamic than ever before. We talked earlier about the winglets. Those winglets are there, adding downforce. We've also got some other clever stuff going on this bike as well, like the front mudguard that's been completely redesigned to deflect air away from that front tyre. We've got a new rider position as well, so they've lowered the fuel tank by 45mm to enable the rider to get even more tucked into this bike. There wasn't a lot of space on this bike before, so definitely not a good bike if you've got a bit of a bad back, because you are going to be hunched up and tucked up even more on the 2020 Fireblade. That's all about getting you into the best possible position purely for aerodynamics. It's definitely not built for comfort. So summing up the aeros, we've got this new aerodynamic fairing to reduce the drag coefficient. We've got the lower fuel tank getting you, the rider, into a more compact position. We've got the inner fairing winglets drawn from the RC213V MotoGP bike, and Honda's smart key adds convenience and also simplifies that top yoke design as well. So what are your thoughts on this bike, the 2020 Honda Fireblade and the Fireblade SP, the CBR1000RR-R? For me, I think this looks like an absolutely amazing feat of engineering. The bigger question is whether or not this bike really has a place on the road anymore, especially when you consider you can get this power now in much more kind of road-focused machines. But absolutely taking nothing away from this bike, it is a miracle of engineering, a bike that I would certainly love to own just for the occasional kind of Sunday blast or track day or something like that. Whether it's practical as your only bike is probably down to you as an individual, but definitely not for me. What are your thoughts though? Comments down below. Once again, thank you to everyone subscribing to the channel and getting involved with these videos. Really appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. And until the next one, ride safe.